An entire week with no Call of the Wild content. I'm not sure that's happened since probably early 2017, but we're finally back, and what better way to come back into Call of the Wild than explore a map that we haven't checked out since the reset and redistribution. We're out here on Layton Lakes today, and we're just going to go around and explore. No specific species to go after, nothing other than hoping to run into something cool from the reset. And not a bad first encounter. A level 4 elk, which I think is going to be a guaranteed gold, and we're going to go ahead and try to take that with the 338 championship. I thought for this hunt we'd go through and bring some of my favorite weapons for this loadout, and as far as big game weapons go, this 338, especially because it took us so long to earn it with the parquet missions, is one of my absolute favorites. And since we have some time to go and claim them, we'll run through our loadout real quick. We have, of course, the 338 championship, the 270 Warden. I went with the 243 because I really think, even still, it's underrated despite everything it can do. And I grabbed the 22 AR Predator Edition just because I really like the camouflage on the gun itself. So that's going to be our loadout for today. Hopefully we get to fire at least one time with every weapon. And a good start there, getting our elk down right away. Now, that is just annoying. We got all the way around, and he's just gonna start floating back, so we might as well go the other way, at least have a chance of getting something in the areas that we haven't gone through, and we may go ahead and take one of these ducks. Now, one thing that I noticed, apparently the track color has changed, because I don't think I had it set to red. That might have been something that happened with the reset, maybe some of the settings got changed as well. But we'll go through and spot all these ducks. The one thing I'm actually looking for is maybe a rare female. Kinda tough to tell. It is cool to see, though, the mallards walking around on land. That was never a thing on Layton prior to the Reventuli update. None of the females look to be rare, though, so we'll probably take that bigger male on the end. Plus, he's easier to identify out there, so one quick shot from the 22 will drop him, and I certainly hope he doesn't somehow end up in the water yet. Looks like we had at least a bit of room to spare before it got into the water, but a gold there at 16.6. And again, we've seen the mallards in the harvest screen, but every time we see a new species that we haven't shot yet since the change, or even just seeing the mallards here on Layton, that harvest screen is such a huge improvement. The only thing that's not an improvement is the fact that we're going to be, I don't know, over 10 minutes in and just running around in circles in this area trying to go and get our bull. But finally, we get to actually see what this elk is going to score, and like I said, I believe it will be a gold. 296.6, where gold is 272. And of course, a heart shot with the 338 to start off is always good, but I love to see, and it's a lot of little details, getting to see the ivory tips on the antlers in the improved harvest screen. That's not something that a lot of species on the maps that we've hunted have. It's really nice to see that, and it's like the contrast, I guess, that highlights it in there, and it looks way better that way. I almost felt like you couldn't even really see them in the previous harvest screen. And it looks like we might just be catching the beginning of moose string time, although doesn't work too good when the wind is not in our favor, but able to take that guy with the 338 as well. We were able to get a diamond moose on Reventuli, so adding another diamond moose to the trophy lodge is no longer one of the big things that I'm looking for out here on Layton, although there's always the potential for rare moose, and I always think back to probably sometime in 2018. Back on the old scoring system, we had like a 905 piebald moose, and of course there was the albino diamond moose at one time as well. All the rare moose that we have in our trophy lodge are decent sized golds, but none compared to those two, and of course both of those were prior to trophy lodges, and since getting those, I've always wanted a bigger rare moose in the lodge, and that's always one of those things, whether it is Reventuli, Medved, Layton, or Yukon, I'm always hoping to stumble into that. I see them post in the community so often. Every time I hear a moose or get a heavy track, I always want to check and see, just in case. You know, it may not have actually been moose string time when those moose were moving from one spot to the next. I think it may have been maybe to their feed time. I had forgotten. They actually changed the whitetail drink time on Layton Lakes again. I think it's basically the same now as on some of the other maps, about 8:30 to 12:30. And I'm not sure what went wrong on that second shot, but we can at least try to get him down. And I think the first one is going to drop, but this is by far the most whitetail I've seen in Balmont in quite a few years, to be honest. I remember at one time finding a fair number in here, but Balmont is just loaded with bucks. And according to the hunting pressure, we were able to take out 2 of them. The first one, double lung and liver, no problem to get him down, a 219 scoring one. The other one's going to be at least a bit of a tougher track. The second shot, while it hit, didn't seem to do a whole lot to bring him down more quickly. So, in an ideal world, he might be kind of trying to head back to the zone and won't be that long a track, but that will remain to be seen. Well, the overall distance of the track was not that bad, but as you can see, we had to go and get Sir 12 to help us out. Both shots were flesh shots and way further back than I would have guessed. I'm curious if the 270 versus something like, say, the 308 that we're a bit more familiar with as of late would have a different speed. I've never noticed rifles in the game being much different other than maybe the lever action rifles. So that's kind of interesting. But we haven't had Star 12 with us in quite some time after trying to take bears with a bow and having some issues there. Had to get him to find that one as there was probably 75 meters or so with no tracks whatsoever. It is pretty cool as well to see whitetail still at this lake. For a long time I had him down in this corner, so we'll probably check on that too, but this lake over here in Mount Kraken, it's always going to be a special lake and one that I always want to go to. Going way back into the beginning days of Call of the Wild, and I really didn't intend to have so many looking back at the old days of Call of the Wild moments in this video, but just kind of happens that way sometimes. There were so many animals here. It was a bit of a bug or something. You'd have everything from moose to black bear, blacktail, whitetail, elk, all resting, feeding, and drinking in this one spot. And I know that for sure I had a level 5 elk here, knew nothing about what I was doing, and shot it and messed up that diamond. And there was also a level 5 moose in multiplayer that kind of suffered the same result long before I had any idea of what was going on. And unfortunately, I never was able to get a diamond in that way over here. But just remembering the amount of animals and stuff, it was pretty wild to see. That's cool as well. Moose have not been very common in this area for quite some time. Kind of a decent one there too, so we'll probably try to take him when he gets through the trees. And actually, he is going to start drinking right there. So I had clearly incorrectly assumed that moose drink time was going to match Reventuli, since the whitetail drink time seemed to be moved to match some of the other maps. But moose drink time on Layton is evidently now 12 to 16:30, which at least I think on Reventuli is a little bit later than that. Maybe that is actually pretty similar, but since he is out in the open, we'll see if we can go 3 for 3 on big animal drop shots. And with the 338 today, just every animal that gets in our line of sight is dropping immediately. Not too bad, and I did actually look back as we were stalking over there. No whitetail down in that corner, so that's probably a good thing. We can move our tent. And one thing I have noticed on Layton, we've had at least 2 tents have the issue where it says a beaver felled a tree on top of the tent and it's returned to your inventory. So that's gonna have to be something we eventually replace, and maybe getting a tent out of an area that's really not that good to begin with could help avoid that in the future. And we have yet another moose up there, probably on its way into drink here as well, but a 222 for him. Hard shot at 145 meters, and I suppose we'll kind of take it slow, scoot over towards where we got the whitetail, and I would certainly assume, given that this is the only real opportunity for a moose to drink around here, that he's probably coming our way. And in fact, he is just a little level 3. I'm curious to see how many end up drinking around here, and it'll be something we definitely go to look at sometime down the road. Probably not going to have a bunch of return trips to this area during this hunt. I do want to go back to Balmont then, and I was wondering why we weren't seeing that many moose, but also it's encouraging to see maybe they've been spread out a bit. Moose on Layton Lakes, for the most part, have just been in Balmont, mostly clustered in there with some kind of scattered around to other areas, so hopefully they're going to be a little more widespread again. But as for this guy, probably a silver. I can't imagine that would have been even close to gold. 155 for him. Double lung did take him down really fast though with the 338. Then we have the blood here from our buck. In fact, he is laying right up between all these rocks. So 3 kills up here, and kind of going back to what I said, how this place used to be just insane for animals. I'd love to know, at some other times, what else spends time in this area. I kind of felt that way a little bit, getting 3 kills really without even having to try that hard. They just kept on presenting shot opportunities. I'm not exactly sure what we're looking at back there, but that paddle, regardless, would make that the biggest moose we've seen so far today. So we'll start kind of scooting up that way. And after a relatively quick run through Balmont, we haven't been super thorough in our hunting around, just try to go and see what we can find, basically running a straight line up through here. I'm gonna say Balmont is probably as good as it ever was, if not better. Lots of whitetails still resting around. Of course, we saw them drinking earlier on, and the moose seem to be pretty much in the same numbers they've always been, and that's pretty cool to see. I've always felt like Balmont at the very beginning, when there were a lot of blacktail and stuff around, was quite good, and then eventually it started to get to a point where it wasn't one of the better areas to hunt, and what I'm seeing right now, it may finally be that again. I'm gonna guess this is our bull, in which case it looks to be a level 4. I still can't get it spotted because of this cow, but I think we're gonna try to get a neck shot. I just had it spotted for a second, or actually, I'm not sure where he's headed. We'll just take that shot right in the crease though. There's another bull somewhere here. I wanted to see what that was, just in case there was actually 2 that were halfway decent, but that was a really long stalk. They were just down in this little dip to the point where we couldn't actually spot and see what it was, but that must be the other bull, in which case I would say the one we shot was the one that we saw from a distance, and it's still going to end up being our biggest one thus far in this hunt. And despite the fact that we did have to crawl for quite some distance, because not only were they pretty well hidden, we also had pretty terrible wind. We still have about 30 minutes real time of moose drink time, and to be honest, I think we're going to try to hunt straight through that and into what I'm going to assume is blacktail drink time. They used to drink in the evening, didn't see any out earlier in the hunt, so best I can guess they are going to be drinking basically last during the daylight hours. But the biggest bull moose so far today is going to be probably 250-ish, I think. 242. Left long shot there at 20 meters. Probably the closest and longest stock I've had for a level 4 moose in quite some time, but at least he ended up giving us a good close shot. Okay, that might be the ugliest moose I have ever seen, and of course it just dipped down there where we couldn't spot it. It's got some kind of weird bend going on in the beams where it droops down. I so wish that was a level 1, but I don't even think we need to take the shot and get up close to know that's going to be a Hall of Shame moose when we can go and take it out. So if he'll turn broadside at any point, we'll just go for the shot from here. I'm really not worried about trying to save the metal, but I do want to make sure we get a good shot and bring him down quickly. I can't believe I've never seen anything like that, but just having it highlighted, that looks so much different than any tiny moose I've ever seen. And I think probably we can make the shot from here. I will show before we do that, all these moose kind of packed in here, and there's one decent bull down in the reeds. We are right up here kind of at the north end of Balmont, and there are just moose all packed in here, but actually while he's walking giving us a much better shot, and naturally didn't reload because we were trying to spot things quickly, let's take that before he ends up taking a step. I think that'll be about right, since we're zeroed for 150. There's actually even another pretty small one in there, but that's going to take him down. I'm quite looking forward to going and seeing what this looks like. That is a pretty big anomaly compared to anyone I've seen in the past. And again, to go back to the beginning with the improved harvest screen, it's going to look better in there, but it's almost, there was a droopy tine elk when Jurax came out for them, and it kind of reminds me of that. The fact that it's even as well makes it so much better. I've never seen one where really the paddle, or the palm I should say, is below the base. I love to look at that. That's gonna have to be a centerpiece in our Hall of Shame somewhere. Maybe, since our Hall of Shame is the Spring Creek Manor, maybe it can be that first big plaque when you walk up the stairs as soon as you go in the room. We'll eventually go and see that today, unless we end up with some kind of really good kill and go to the main lodge. But I'm kind of pleased we ended up finding that. We'll check real quick to make sure there's nothing more at the far northwest end of Balmont, but pretty soon we're going to be able to branch out and check other areas. So finally, we get the chance to go after some blacktail, and in the first herd out here, we do have a max wood estimate buck, so we'll try to take that with the 270, and I thought we'd come to Balmont Lake first. There's traditionally been blacktail here for forever, and good to see that has not changed out here at this spot. And by the way, I did mention maybe not going back to that lake over in the west side of the map very much for moose at least, but I definitely do want to go and check it out for the blacktail. That's always been a good spot for them as well, and especially given the fact that Balmont Lake seems to have worked out. That's something I want to make sure we do before it gets dark out. But not a bad blacktail to start with here, a 157.5 gold. And again, just another species to take a look at in the harvest screen. Kind of helps to appreciate some of the finer detail that goes into the models, but we'll continue going around here a little bit before we head to another lake. And hopefully, we have got about 30 minutes of blacktail drink time to go. Hopefully we can make the rounds and check out a bunch of spots. Well, finally we're starting to find some blacktail again, another max wood estimate level 4, but not in Balmont. I think this is technically still Chile, but we might be in the very southern part of Norden, and we are. Basically, right on the border though between the two regions, and we finally run into another blacktail. Did a fair bit of hunting in Balmont without running into any, and maybe we were just in the wrong areas. But it is interesting, it seems blacktail are in some of the areas they used to be, but also moved around a little bit, and I'm not sure where some of the ones that we would expect to encounter but aren't encountering may be compared to in the past, but it is now a little past 1800, in fact it's 1830, so we'll try to grab this guy and if we can get to one or two more spots, but it's a little slower going when we can't figure out where they are. But on the bright side, 2 max wood estimate bucks, a 152.3 this time for this guy, and we'll try to pick a spot. This has had blacktail in the past, and I think because it's close by, we could at least give that a shot. And I don't think the rain's going to help with the lighting situation, so probably best to go somewhere close. And there are blacktail here. Unfortunately though, looks like just does. At this particular lake, I don't see any antler here, so I was thinking we haven't shot the 243 yet. Might as well try to take this doe with the 243. Wanted to get a hard shot and not have to track, but I don't think she'll be going all that far regardless, and rather than wrap up out here in the little bit of remaining light and rain, we'll probably go back to the Hall of Shame and at least go and take a look at that goofy looking moose that we got earlier. And still we're getting warning calls from other blacktail does. There must be a bunch in this area, but we were able to get a right lung shot there. Maybe a little farther forward. I don't know if the 243 at that angle was going to hit the heart regardless, but let's go back then and look at that moose. And this is a fairly significant thing. This red deer has been here darn near since the creation of this lodge. You can see April 15th of 2019. It was at least harvested, and not long after that I'm sure we would have placed it on this plaque. But I really do think a moose with this type of rack deserves to be there. It's just the saddest looking antlers I've ever seen, and I think probably we do want it to be looking kind of upwards, although that side look was pretty interesting as well. And I mean, there's a pretty good example of exactly what's going on here. We've got we have a level 1 and a level 2 up here, I think. This is a level 1 true rack moose. You can see the beams are not going into the plaque. This is actually a level 2 legacy rack. The beams still don't go into the plaque at all. These dig so far back into the plaque that you can just barely see, at least on the left side, the time's poking back through the wall, but that's a pretty significant bend in those beams, and especially when you see it like that. That is the epitome of a Hall of Shame moose, if you ask me. It's not a level 1, I wish it would have been, but definitely earned a spot here in the Hall of Shame, and despite the fact that we didn't get any real trophy animals on that hunt, pretty happy to get that moose. That's one of the most unique animals we've ever gotten, big animal or small, and it was just nice to get back out on Layton Lakes. That's not something that we get to do as much anymore. As much as I enjoy hunting Layton Lakes, It's been a map we've hunted a bunch of times, and it's always nice when there is a reset or redistribution, and kind of getting to re-experience it all over again in that way. But anyway, I think that is officially going to do it for this video, so as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.